So when did you lose that kid inside of you? Kids are incredible. They come with such curiosity. There's no limits. They are so resilient, and yet they do so much. And we somehow lose this ability to say, hey, you know what? Like, I have to stop thinking about it like that. I have to stop approaching life a little bit differently. And yes, of course, there's ways that kids are just immature and doing whatnot. But there's so many good things that kids have, good qualities that they have. But for some reason, as we get older, we just lose them because we start caring what other people think about us. And we try to see what's really possible. We think we know what's really possible. And we have these things that happen to us that really just hold us back from taking the action that we want. And we try to say we're going to be a little bit more, we're going to be more reasonable. We're going to be realistic with our expectations in terms of what's possible in the world. And what happens is we end up selling ourselves so short. And it's honestly so sad. And if we can start to just tap into it just a little bit, our own kidness, or I don't know what you want to call it, but our own self, back when we were younger, when we didn't care what anybody thought, when we thought anything was really possible, we thought jumping off of a mountain was possible without any parachutes. So then all of a sudden we start to play in a different playing field. And I think there are certain people out there who are playing in that playing field. Something I aspire to, it's something I try to step into, because I know if I could start playing in that level, things are going to be very, very different for me. Because so many times we hold ourselves back, and the only thing that's really stopping us from achieving that success that we really, truly desire is ourselves. And if we could start to say, hey, you know what? What happened? When was that moment? Who was that person that ruined it for me? Because there's probably a time that you remember that somebody said something to you, or there was a certain expectation, or somebody got upset, or somebody, shot down your idea. And you were like, you know what? Maybe it's not possible. And all of a sudden we get into this self-doubt of every little thing that we thought was possible. And we end up just holding ourselves back. And then we're adults and we're not allowing ourselves to step into it anymore. And what's interesting is that it doesn't really cost you anything to think about it. And that's what I want to talk about today. It's like, what can we do? How can we start to step into thinking big again? Because if we could start to think big again, because it doesn't really cost anything, it's just our mindset, then what ends up happening is that we can start to trigger certain things in our mind to get us more excited about certain areas of our life. And it doesn't mean we do 100% of everything we want to be doing or accomplishing. And we'll talk about practically what we could do towards the end. But understanding that, hey, you know what? If I could just start to think about it, if I could wave a magic wand and be like, hey, that would be really cool if I could do X, Y, and Z. Then guess what? Then imagine what we can accomplish. Because how much should you do? Everyone likes to ask these questions. How much should you do? As much as you can. How much money should you make? As much as you can. How great should your relationships be and your health be? As best as they can. And if we could start to say, hey, it's going to take time. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy, but it could be simple. Then guess what? All of a sudden, we start to move forward just a little bit more. And if we could start to slowly take this and start to move forward just a little bit, what ends up happening is we start to get to a place where, you know what, we're actually living a certain type of lifestyle. We're actually doing a lot more. And the reason why I think so many people are bitter about it is because so many people are just miserable with their lives. How many people are actually happy with their lives? Probably not a lot. The percentage is probably not so great. And if we can start to say, hey, you know what, there's more that I want to achieve. And I think one of the biggest challenges to living a fulfilling and happy life, and this is what I talk about in my course, my online course that I have, is that, you know what, if we could try to understand that there is a goal that we have, we're not there yet. There's going to be this journey that's going to have to get us to that goal. But how can we start to balance the fact that we don't have the goal? Sort of shows that we're lacking in something. Right? If you want to be healthier, so you're lacking in being healthy. But then, so how are you supposed to be happy now? How are you supposed to be having that meaningful life now? And that's one of the balances we have to portray and try to understand. And what we talk about in the course is we have to start working on ourselves. What is it that I'm doing now? Am I on that path? Am I on that trajectory? Because at the end of the day, whenever you win anything or even you succeed at a specific goal, you end up getting happy from that goal. But the consistent joy that you get, even after the goal, or I would say mostly through the goal, is that journey. And that is something that is so special. So let's talk about let's get real practical over here. So we want to start working on our relationships. So what are certain things that we could do? So number one, maybe have that difficult conversation that you don't want to have. So many times people get into get into a relationship, which is great. And then they end up having like this thing that's like really bugging them or really annoying them. Or maybe they know some things about the other person is annoying them. And what we have to understand, what we have to realize is, hey, if I could bring up this topic, if I could start to say, this is going to be really uncomfortable, but I know I need to do this for the sake of the relationship. I need to put my ego aside and I need to hear the other person, or I need to express myself to the other person in a nice way. Then what can end up happening is that we end up starting to build that relationship. But that's how I think relationships are built. I heard one of my friends one time gave this example. I forgot who he heard it from, but if you have like a string and the top of the string is one partner and the bottom of the string is another partner, and you cut the string, right? The relationship gets messed up, it gets rocky. And then you meld it together and you tie a knot in the string. So what ends up happening is that because you tie the knot, the string actually gets shorter and the relationship gets stronger. And because we get closer to one another, that's like something really beautiful. And so many times you have to realize, like, going through those tough times, not that we should want them, but when they do happen, not to avoid them, because they're going to happen. So even if you try to avoid them, they're going to happen. Understand that having those conversations is going to be the thing that's going to help us get stronger in a relationship. And you might say, well, Bennett, my spouse cannot handle these conversations. So then we have to strategize around that. How can we get our point across? How can we really work on it? Because my true belief is that if we can start to work on those conversations, have those things get off our chest, they don't end up building up. And then a year down the line, they don't like come back to bite us. Like, well, you were doing X, Y, and Z. And you're like, oh, I had no idea that was annoying to you. You never told me. And if we could start to just get ourselves across, that can be something that can be really helpful. Another thing we can do is just like text someone that you love every day. A kid, a spouse, a parent, sibling. Text them. Be like, hey, what's going on? Just thinking about you. That could be something that could really build a relationship. Nothing crazy. But guess what? That just shows the person that you're thinking about them. And a final idea that you have is just reach out to somebody you haven't spoken to in a while. Who's somebody that like you haven't spoken to in a couple of months? You're like, you know what? I haven't spoken to that person. Let me just reach out to that person. And guess what? If you can start to focus on your relationship just in those small 3 things, 2 of them being really easy at texting and calling somebody, then guess what? Your relationships will be better because you're starting to put time into it. And it's something that we get so scared of because we think it has to be, we have to do all of these things, and we have to go on a date night every single night, and we have to buy beautiful gifts, and we have to be able to have such deep, meaningful conversations every single night, and such amazing pillow talk and all these amazing things. But guess what? Like, realistically, like, people are busy, things are going on, and you don't need that much time. But you need time and you need consistency. And if you could start to working on this and start to say, hey, you know what? Put in my schedule every Monday at lunchtime, I'm calling one person that I haven't spoken to in a while. And guess what? Like, your relationships are going to get better. What about your finances? So number one is, like, first of all, know where you are. So many people don't have no idea their finances, like what's really going on, what their expenses are, what their income is. Like, they have no idea. Really just basic stuff. Know what's going on. The other thing is, like, start to budget. If you could start to budget, I'm telling you, that could shift everything. It's annoying, especially in the beginning, but then you start to go through, like, hey, you know what? Those things that we keep spending money on, maybe we don't really need. And what ends up happening is that we allow ourselves to live a lot less stressless, right? We live a lot less stressful. And what we could do is that we can start to really work on stuff in that type of way. And then I think the biggest thing is, like, you have to start to plan for your future. Whether it's starting to invest right now for the future, or whether it's going to be in a while to invest in the future. But understand that if we can have a plan to say, hey, you know what? There's a time that we need to start to take money every single month and start to put it towards our future, whether it's in stocks, bonds, real estate, crypto, whatever your thing is. Understand that, you know what? I need to start to plan for that. Because if you can start to plan for that, then I'm telling you, things are going to look different. Don't just wait for things to happen. Make things happen. And even just like regarding our health, what can we do? So number one is know what you eat. So many people just don't realize it. It's like they say, one of the biggest food hacks that you can do, there was just understanding and even losing weight, is just writing down everything that you eat every day. Do it for a week and see what it is, and you realize how much more you eat than you think you did. With maybe go on a run or something, go exercise a little bit. And if you could do that, then all of a sudden we start to just work on ourselves. And it doesn't mean you have to go to the gym at 5 o'clock every morning, but maybe go to the gym for, once a week for 30 minutes. Maybe just go on a run for 30 minutes, go on a jog, go on a walk, do something to get yourself out there. Because so many times you don't realize this, but we just start the small disciplines. It starts to overflow into other areas of our life. And that is something that we have to understand. And we have to realize that, like, we're all going to be distracted, right? That's the thing. We all get distracted from everything. But what happens is that we don't really take care of ourselves. And we are the ones who have to take the brunt of what's happening, what's going on.
And unfortunately, that's like very nice. But what ends up happening is that everybody else suffers from that. Because if we're not doing too well, then the people around us are probably also not doing too well. And if we can start to say, hey, I really need to start to focus on myself. I really need to start working on my health, on my relationships, my own personal development, need to build up my confidence. Then what ends up happening is that we end up working on it. And we end up becoming a better person. We end up becoming a better spouse, a better boss, a better worker, whatever it is that we're doing. And that is something that we have to realize. There's a client of mine who he loves going to weddings. Whenever he gets to a wedding, he goes, but like he's there the whole entire time. And he told me like a couple of weeks ago that he went to a wedding and he didn't get back home till like 4 a.m. He ended up hanging out with another friend afterwards and this and that. And he was telling me how like it literally ruined like 2 or 3 days of his week. Totally threw off his schedule. He ended up going to sleep. Like I think he ended up staying up for a little bit, then going to sleep at like 8 o'clock, and then he ended up. It was like a whole thing that he ruined like 2 or 3 days of his week. And he's like, "Yeah, that can't happen again." He said, "But I love going to weddings. What am I supposed to do?" And I'm like, "You have to start saying no or putting boundaries." Really successful people don't do everything, and I think it's something that if you're into like productivity or you're looking to succeed and you're looking to take things to the next level, you want to be able to do everything. But the truth is, like, you won't be able to. We only have 24 hours in the day. People need our time. The different priorities of people. Your spouse might need you. Your kids might need you more than a friend. Or sometimes your friend might need you more than another friend. And if we can start to say, hey, you know what? What's really going on here? And we can start living our lives and start saying no to things, that could be something that could switch it all. Because so many people don't realize that we get ourselves so distracted based on other people's needs and other people's desires, and we just throw ourselves under the bus. I have a whole YouTube video on people pleasing and how we can start to say no. If you are a people pleaser, for sure check that out on my YouTube channel, which you for sure subscribe to if you're not subscribed already. It's crazy if you're not subscribed. But I'll understand that, you know what is it that we can start to do for our own lives? And we have to realize that, you know what, it's not going to be easy. All these things that we want to do, all the different areas of our life that we don't want to be, that we want to be working on, it's not going to be easy, but it will be worth it. I don't think anybody really regrets doing the hard work. That's only going to be more beneficial to them. And if we can start to say, hey, you know what? All I have to do is just this 5-minute thing a week, and then that will change in 6 months my whole relationship to food, to my health, to my relationships. Then guess what? Is it not worth it? It's totally worth it. People settle for so little. It's crazy. They have such a low standard, whether it's their own finances, their own money that they want to make. And guess what? And there's times for it. I understand that. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say work on everything at once at the same time, but slowly build up to it. What's that dream of yours? What is that little kid inside of you saying, hey, you know what? In 10 years, where do I want to be? Because if I gave you 10 years or 20 years, do you think you could switch it and change it? That's probably enough time. But guess what? Nobody thinks about it, and therefore they don't work on it. They don't change it. And because they don't change it, they end up living this life that they don't want to live. And it's scary as anything. Look to try to just figure out what it is you want. And it doesn't have to happen tomorrow, but once we get on the path, I'm telling you, that's the part that feels amazing. That's the part that's going to help you move forward. That's the part that's going to give you the joy. And it's totally going to be worth it. So let me ask you a question. What is that one thing you want to be doing? What's that one area of your own personal life that you want to start really stepping into? That you want to say, hey, you know what? I really want to step this up. I really want to be able to maximize this one area. You know, it'd be really cool if I could do this one thing. I have this one experience. It's a different playing field that people are playing on. And just like when you're on a highway and you're like in pursuit of buying a new car, you start to see that car everywhere and you see the opportunities all around you. So the same thing with our dreams, the same thing with the ideas, the same thing with the stuff that we want to experience or the stuff we want. And I'm not saying just want it because like, oh, I want to own a private jet. Like, no, that's ridiculous. What's the purpose of it? And maybe the purpose is a private jet is like, you know what? I really just want to have that one-on-one time with my family on a plane because we're going to be traveling a lot. But if you can start to say that more important than the object that we have is the purpose behind the object, then guess what? Everything starts to shift. It's not about the plane. It's not about the nice house or the car or the watch. It's what's the purpose behind it. And I think so many people don't think about that. And if we could start to just recognize that, I'm telling you, things would be different. But we have the ability to experience so much more. We have the ability to attain so much more. We have the ability to live a quality of life that we want. We don't have to be stressed all the time about our finances or about whether the world is going into World War III or blowing up or whatever it is. We have that ability. And are we changing ourselves? Are we working on ourselves? Or are we just going to give up like that older adult, be pessimistic about the reality of the world? It's not how it works. And the people who actually did it, they're fake, they cheated, they don't really have an amazing life. And that's the question you really need to ask yourself. Which one would you rather believe? Which path would you rather take? Because at the end of the life, we're going to be on our deathbed and we're going to probably think about it. And would we rather have the life where, you know what, at least I tried and I couldn't figure it out, but like, at least I tried? Or the life of saying like, no, I didn't even try, but like, it would have been cool if I could have done that. And I think we all have that ability to ask ourselves these questions. And I think if we could start working on them, I'm telling you, a lot of things could start to change for us.